It is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
I bet.
There's way
But
too
I
many
mean,
moving
exhausting
pieces.
in a good way. Right? Because, okay, so Super Killer, Indiegogo, you're well past 20,000 now, yeah?
Yeah,
What are
yeah.
we
So
at?
like 2022 or something. We're on our way to 25.
22.9. Yeah.
No, it's not
Three.
bad.
That's not bad.
Planned badly though, because I had stretch goals, and stretch goals were like, if we hit 10,000 guys, can you? And now I'm like, oh god, I'm out of stretch goals. So that's what I'm trying to fix today. It's a constantly moving ballet.
But cool. Yeah. Congratulations. It's awesome. And it gives us an excuse
Yeah,
to finally actually talk.
I know it's
And
great. Man,
yeah,
we've been talking through DMs for a
a
couple
little
years
while.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've started your own kind of YouTube journey, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm at like 12,000 something, which,
That's
it's a
really
beginning.
good.
Yeah.
It's like honestly, and I don't want to discourage anything. I think just YouTube right now, it feels harder to grow
Yeah.
now. I think with shorts and other weird stuff, there's a lot of stuff competing for people's like eyeballs.
TikTok and
Yeah, it's literally
Twitter
just like
video.
keep at it. You get a couple hits, and like it becomes exponential at a certain point.
I just need more Rings of Power. I think I doubled my subscriber base from Rings of Power. It
So
was
you're smart
wild.
because you find something that works and you stick with it. I'm an idiot. Like I was getting huge views on Star Wars stuff, and I was like, well, people don't just want me to talk about Star Wars. And now looking back, I go, man, if you just kept talking about Star Wars like nonstop,
Right.
way bigger. But I think I probably would have thrown myself off a cliff if I only talked about Star Wars.
But Star Wars is always so great and enjoyable.
Well, that's the problem is if I get talking about it, I will become obsessive with it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I will still have, 2-hour conversations about Star Wars. And then I go, why am I wasting all this brain power being upset at the sequel trilogy? It's just baffling how badly screwed it up.
If only YouTube had really been around during the prequel trilogy, that could have been heady days.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're a Red Letter Media fan, but they put out their prequel reviews, years after the fact. And they were actually huge inspirations to me. I was like, oh my God, this is what a movie review can be. I mean, let's be clear, I ripped off Red Letter Media, but hopefully I did it with enough style and grace that it's okay.
Yeah, everybody rips off everybody. That's just the reality of.
You call it inspiration.
There you go. Yes. Yes, inspiration. Everyone is inspired by everybody.
Inspired to rip you off. So yeah, I've been very excited. The comic book is going great. I didn't know how this would do because right now it's weird. It's like there's a lot of YouTube guys making comic books. I hope people don't think that it's like some dumb cash grab. Like, oh, all these YouTube guys are making comic books. They don't actually care about comics. Like, I was actually digging up my old school notebooks because this book I'm doing, Super Killer, is actually based on an idea I had like in high school, which you could say is like, oh God, you're going back to the well for that. And it's like, well, no, it was a really good idea. And honestly, the reason I wanted to do this is because I kind of fell into YouTube by, I don't want to say by accident, but it was never like my main goal. I always wanted to like be writing and like making stories. I actually spent like all this time writing the Great American Novel, and it was this 100,000 page or word thing, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. It's gonna kickstart my career. And then nobody cares about books, or nobody cares about books from dumb fat white guys. They're like, I don't know, we don't need this. They're like, is it a young girl in a dystopian future? And I'm like, no, it's about white guy problems. And they're like, we don't care about it. So I kind of got into YouTube, but the whole thing was, I'm like, well, here's where I can build an audience to hopefully prove to them, hey, I'm funny. I have fun ideas. I care deeply about storytelling, which is why I pick apart, these terrible Star Wars movies and whatever else. And now finally I'm able to manifest out of the ether, a creative work, something with a plot and a story. And I'm more excited about this than anything. It's fantastic. And I'm glad people are giving me the chance to tell stories, which is what I want to do.
Yeah. So how did you how did it come? Like you say, out of the ether, but clearly that's glossing over a few details. Like when did the light bulb like go off and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like, and here's how I'm going to do this. And here's who I'm going to you have artists working with you. How did that all come together?
So I think I had seen somebody, obviously, I'm a big guy on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. I've worked for companies putting together a lot of stuff in the board game space. So I'm always looking at like what's going on crowdfunding. And I saw that people were, starting to crowd fund comics. And it used to be you would put out like a crowdfunding comic and people were like, comics, who cares? And you'd raise like, $1,000, $2,000. And let's be clear, I don't know how some of these guys make a comic on $2,000. I'm like, I got to pay my artist more than $2,000. Gee whiz. But then I saw like there was kind of this growing movement that people were like, okay, well, let's back these guys and actually give them the money they need to make an incredible book. And I was like, wait, I have all these ideas that I've always, prior to working on Super Killer, I was trying to pitch an animated series in Hollywood. That went nowhere. I've filmed pilots for TV shows. I've always worked in like the video medium just because I don't know how to draw. I was like, well, I can't draw. I can't make a comic. I can make a movie or a TV show or something. But then I was like, wait, idiot, you can hire an artist. Like you've reached and now that we have tech, there are more artists than ever before because they have, you can buy a drawing tablet now for like $50. Like we've reached this point, this perfect apex of technology. And also there's just art tutorials online and everywhere that there's all these artists who are fantastic or are looking to make stuff. And I was like, so I'm in a position where I have a great story, and I know I have a great storyteller. Again, I'm more from the realm of like film and TV because that's what I know. But I'm like, I think I could write a comic and get a guy to help me make it. And luckily, I mean, I went crazy trying to find the right artist for this project because there's a lot of artists out there. I'm not gonna knock them. Some of them are better than others. Let's put it that way, But I was digging through Facebook artist groups, like going through like years of archives, being like, maybe. And I found this guy's post from like a year and a half ago. His name's Keter LeBeau. He's a guy out of Mexico. And he's like, hey, I'm a comic artist. I'm looking for some work. And I'm like, how has no one hired this guy? He's fantastic. Oh my God. So I managed to connect up with this guy. I gave him the pitch. Thankfully, he loved the pitch. He thought it was hilarious. And for the last year or so, we've just been kind of workshopping this thing, getting pages done, putting together promotional material. And it's finally really starting to come together. And of course, now that we have the funding, it's going to be gangbusters. We're going to be able to do so much.
So Super Killer is the story of an agent who is sent to kill primary heroes in various worlds in universes that need to be like unplugged from the multiverse. Is that
right?
Kind of the short version?
Yeah. Some people like struggle to get their heads around it, but the basic idea is that there is a multiverse. There's multiple universes. I don't want to give away exactly what's going on, but there is this certain interdimensional agency that's like, guys, here's the deal. Multiverses keep getting created. It just happens. They pop out of nowhere and they suck energy out of the system. Okay. And if they keep getting created and we don't do anything about it, they're all going to collapse in order on each other. And then we have no worlds left. So what's the fairest way to handle this? I won't say exactly how they pick worlds for demolition, but basically they pick worlds and they say, let's just knock this one off. But these worlds, these universes, they have their own, almost like an immune system, is that they always have a chosen one. There's always like the primary hero of the universe, the one who will save us all. And the universe goes, well, as long as I got my chosen one, I'm fine. So, and normally if you kill a chosen one, like a Luke Skywalker or a Superman or whatever, normally within these universes, that power will then transfer to a different individual within the universe. But these guys have devised a way that their agents, their assassins, can kill this individual. It disrupts the protocol, so the chosen one, title does not pass on to another individual. And the universe goes, I don't have a chosen one. I'm screwed, and basically unplugs themselves from the multiversal stack, thus freeing up energies for more universes. What this means, though, is that the book, it's a dark comedy, is that you have a guy whose job is to go and end worlds. He shows up, shoots people in the head, and then, billions of people end up having their world destroyed. And it's kind of, a guy going, look, I don't like that I have to do it. I don't like this job. He's very, got a very dark sense of humor about it. He's like, well, but what am I going to do? It's my job. And if I don't do it, all the worlds end. So he has to justify it to himself. And that's kind of where the comedy comes in, is like, how do you take a guy who's probably the worst villain in history, literally ending billions of lives and try to make that a likable, interesting character that people go, yeah, but I kind of like him. So that's kind of the conundrum that I'm up against. And there's been a lot of like hand wringing of them, like, man, is this too dark? Like, are people going to be able to get behind a guy who ends worlds? And I'm like, you know what? The best advice I ever give people as a creative is if you have an idea that seems insane, it's probably the best idea you've ever had. And just push through. And that's been so true about so much of my stuff. I don't know what YouTube videos of mine you've seen. Like the one where I went to Berkeley, there was a big protest. I handed out cans of Pepsi to make fun of the Kendall Jenner commercial. Did you ever see that one?
I don't. No, I think the one that sticks out for me is your Dave Chappelle protest.
The Dave Chappelle thing. Again, this is a terrible idea. Is that everyone is protesting Dave Chappelle, and me and my friend are going to show up with signs that say we like jokes, and everyone's going to be mad at us, and they're going to attack us. They literally shoved Dick into a planter and almost cracked his head open.
Yeah.
And I tell people, I go, yeah, that was bad. Some Antifa guys were very upset with us, and some violence did take place. I have a whole video on that, which people should watch. But I tell people, listen, if you have an insane idea, it might be your worst idea. Sometimes I've had insane ideas that go nowhere.
But it can go either way.
Times, all my best ideas have been me going, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? And just pushing through the madness. And at the end of it, you go, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I believed in the insanity.
During that Chappelle counter protest, the jokes are funny counter. Did you ever feel a little nervous, like someone was going to actually like shoot you or something? Like, it got pretty hot. Like it got pretty hairy there.
Yeah. A big moment, which we're so lucky that some guy got it like a perfect angle and put it on tape. Someone else got the footage. Was I was standing around with my sign. And this guy, the sign again says, we like jokes. So the idea was, and we talked about this ahead of time, we're like, okay, well, we want to go counter protest. Do we have signs, and Dick was like, well, maybe we have signs that say like, we support black comedians or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's too on the nose. It's like too much. Like literally all we need to say is we like jokes. And the fact that that's going to piss people off, that's funny. Like that's ridiculous. How could you argue with a statement like we like jokes? But I'm there and I'm holding this sign that says we like jokes. And this very angry guy, who we later found out is the head writer for the Frasier reboot, which makes no sense, gets mad and grabs my sign out of my hands, snaps it in half, the stick that was holding it, and then I'm still holding the the other broken half of the stick that previously had a sign attached to it, and he points at me and he starts yelling, "This guy's got a weapon!" And I'm like, what the hell? That was the point where I was like, I started looking. There was some like security guards, but it was clear they were like, cheap rent-a-cops. Because I'm kind of looking at them like, hey guys, this might go south real quick. Like I've been to some of this Antifa stuff before. When someone yells, "This guy's got a weapon," it can turn into a street beatdown pretty quickly. Luckily, I think I had a protective wall of like just angry hippie women in front of me. So the Antifa guys couldn't rush me yet. Like I had to deal with all those women first. So, but I did honestly, if you watch the video, I kind of start stepping back and I'm like, hey man, we're cool. I also do this thing
I remember that. I remember that. Yeah. That was wild.
I also diffused the crowd by going like, look, I'm just a big fat idiot, and I'm kind of laughing to myself. I'm like, clearly, I'm not going to hit anybody. I'm too much of a pussy. Leave me alone. I think when you look at a guy like me and you go, oh, he's probably like mentally handicapped. Let's not beat him up. That's the vibe I try to give off in my everyday situations. But yeah, it did go bad for my buddy Dick. He got accused of like, you got to watch the video I have on my YouTube where we have the footage where he's holding his sign, and then the guy forces himself between Dick and the sign. So it's kind of like looked like Dick had him was hugging him or something. And then somebody accused him of choking the guy, and it's like the guy stepped between him and the sign. Like he's not choking him. Turned into a whole violent altercation.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I mean there is people are. Some
it's
of
bizarre.
Some of these guys, well, if they think they're on the right side of history, the most dangerous thing is a guy on the right side of history because everything he does is justified by the history books, right?
Yep.
He thinks he's going to be the man who shot Hitler, so he has every right to open fire on you, and you have to worry about those people who have that kind of ideology.
It's just that now Dave Chappelle is Hitler, so we live
right.
we live in a very interesting moment in history for sure.
There are people who've tried to assault Dave Chappelle. Like,
Yeah.
that's horrifying. It is horrifying the state that comedian comedy is in. I mean, and you
Yeah.
see videos of comedians on like stages getting attacked by audience members who are offended and whatever else. You're like, what happened to the standard of understanding that someone's putting on a show, that they're, telling a joke, and maybe you don't like it, okay, and that's your right, and you can leave. But you don't beat up a guy for making jokes. It's crazy where we're landing right now with some of the rhetoric.
Well, yeah. I mean, you look at like, some of George Carlin's stuff and then, where we are now, what, 30, 40 years later. And you think, wait, how? How have we gone? It's almost full circle. But that's kind of also part of your motivating, like in your pitch for the Super Killer comic is like, well, I want to do something funny that the mainstream isn't doing. That's,
Dude,
I mean, do you see that like the mainstream as almost self-censorious? Like they're clamping down on kind of like unacceptable humor or unacceptable. Well, there's just lots of unacceptable these days.
I am deeply worried about the future of comedy. Not to get too serious or whatever, but like when I see comedians forced to grovel and apologize for material that 5 years ago was probably fine, 6-10 years ago. I mean, once, you had a bunch of stuff during Black Lives Matter. You had Tina Fey come out apologizing. Oh, I can't believe we made this joke on 30 Rock. And they were deleting episodes of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, deleting episodes of The Office or scenes. I mean, there's an entire episode. Bob and David, I don't know if you're a Mr. Show fan, Bob Odenkirk, David Cross. They had a Netflix show, and there was one sketch where they're very clearly making fun of an idiot character, and the character puts on blackface to try and piss off the cops. They didn't even delete that one scene. They just deleted the whole episode. Like, you can't watch. Hopefully you have an archive of it somewhere. All to appease this angry mob, which I understand. Let's be clear. This is not me saying, I don't understand the plight of the marginalized, and I totally empathize with all that. But I don't see why we can't also have comedy that is. And these jokes were not poking fun at the marginalized. These were jokes at the expense of the characters.
Right.
It's just bizarre to see.
That's the irony, right? Is that a lot of this comedy, it
is progressive. It was progressive. It was, look at how stupid this guy is. Mm-hmm. There's such a great Office scene that they got rid of, which was they're celebrating Christmas or whatever, and they're doing like a traditional Norwegian Christmas or whatever. And then one of the guys is coming in dressed as like this actual Norwegian tradition where they dress up in like full blackface as elves or whatever. And he gets a text from his buddy like, "It's a no-go, turn around." And it's just this great visual image of him like turning around and walking back to the car. And that scene is gone now. It was a joke at the expense of, we have different cultural norms. That isn't acceptable. Can you believe it used to be? And we can't.
Well, yeah. I mean, some of The Office's funniest moments are racial, like awkwardness, or like just based around those, just how horrible it is.
People, yes, and racism. That's the thing, is racism exists. We know it exists. So, what is the benefit of pretending that it doesn't in the world of comedy? Would it not be better to have racists in the world of comedy and make fun of them and make fun of racism and what? But instead, it's just everybody is so terrified of being canceled or accused of being impure that they go, you know what? Let's not even touch it. Let's just make jokes about cereal brands and airplanes and the most boring stuff in the world. And it breaks my heart because I was a huge Office fan. I was a huge fan of a lot of these sitcoms, 30 Rock and Brooklyn, whatever the hell. And I honestly,
Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Oh, there was one other one that I really like.
Parks and Rec.
I do like. No, I didn't like Parks and Rec. I do like Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I think Curb is one of those shows that has stayed pretty true and being a little bit edgy. Maybe because it's on HBO, it can get away with it. But I used to actually get excited about watching network television. If, believe it or not, I was like, wow, there's some funny stuff on network TV. Now, you could not name a single network TV show that the comedy sitcom, anything. They don't make comedy movies anymore. Because it's all just terrible. I mean, the guy who made Joker used to make the Hangover films, And famously, an interviewer asked him, "Is like, would you ever go back to comedy?" He's like, "Comedy? We're not allowed to make comedies anymore." And I'm like, he's right. We're not. It's just the studios don't want to touch it
Yeah.
because they're just too worried of the backlash. They don't care.
Well,
And
the
it's my
last.
theory, not to be too long winded. It's my theory that the studios right now are waiting for independent comedians to show up, like shock the audiences back into accepting comedy again. And at some point, we're going to have the first, another big indie comedy. Something's going to come out. It's going to make like $100 million, $200 million off a, $2 million budget or whatever, some stupid indie comedy. And then the studios are going to go, oh, okay, we can make comedies again. I think it's up to independents to change the audience's mind because the studios are too afraid to do anything.
Well, there's going to be a backlash. There's always it happens in cycles, right? Like
it's happening.
The PC we've had PC, political correctness take over everything before, and then we've seen it, lose popularity and go away again.
Back and forth.
And now it's back again, and now it's back with the full brunt of social media and the internet, which we didn't, I'd say PC culture in the 80s gave way in the 90s, probably around the time Tarantino started making movies, and now it's back, but with Twitter and all that shit. The last movie I bought an actual Blu-ray of was Tropic Thunder, because I keep thinking they're gonna delete that from the internet at some point. It always cracks me up when I see people on Twitter freaking out about Robert Downey Jr. in blackface.
That was my most viral tweet ever. I made a tweet. Yeah, I made a tweet, and I said my favorite tweet genre is young people discovering the movie Tropic Thunder. Yes. And I just had a bunch of screenshots of people going, wait a minute, Iron Man did blackface? Cancel it, because there's a new generation that doesn't know. Yeah. And that tweet literally had like news articles, like, because it had like millions of retweets. I wish I hadn't have deleted it. But it is true that we have a young generation, which it seems like there's a split. There's a certain amount of the young generation that totally buys in to the PC politics, and they go, we should not joke about anything. Everybody should be enshrined and feel magical all of the time. And then I do think there is, I'm seeing a more growing group. I don't know more in terms of numbers, but it's happening more and more, where they're going, hey, this is stupid. We want to joke around. We're kids. We're constantly being forced to bite our tongues. Some of this seems silly. I mean, I'm seeing kids and they're like, why do I got to say my pronouns at the beginning of every class period? Like, you know what they are. It's not, and I think you are going to see that pushback from people who go, okay, we've got that. And that's kind of the important yin yang, is like, we do need to push the edge of progressiveness every now and again. We learn more and more about the human condition, and there are, different types of people who, are deserving of acceptance that maybe weren't before. But we also, sometimes push way too far, and then we rein it back in. And we go, okay, we're kind of comfortable here. It's just hard when you're an asshole like me, an asshole, and you're living in the let's, see how far we can push progressiveness era. And you're like, I don't belong here. Snap back already. I keep waiting for this to be fun again. Yeah, it's driving me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, some of it, I think, is like, some of what we see now, I think, is just kind of, and I talked about this before, but Youthful Rebellion, like some of this, all the, we've seen a lot of like push into, pronouns and stuff, like you said. That's like, this is sort of like every generation has to carve out its identity and push back against the older generation. And so to some degree, I think there's some of that going on. And then we'll see an even younger generation say, fuck that. I'm sick of these rules. There's a lot of rules in this Youthful Rebellion that we're seeing right now. And one of them is you really can't be funny. Which is,
you can only make certain jokes. Yeah. It's It's very limited. But luckily, again, in the independent sphere, we don't have to play by those rules. Like if I took this book to a publisher, and again, this book, has some jokes. At one point, there's a Superman character, and we find out he has a gay lover. And it's talking about, I knew something was up, because how could you attach nipple clamps to a man with indestructible skin? Clearly, you see them practicing BDSM or whatever, and you're going, clearly, you must have a shard of, this world's version of kryptonite. And if I tried to bring that to a publisher, they'd be like, we don't really want to touch, him having a gay lover and them doing weird BDSM sex shit. And now but here it's like, it's funny. I can do it. And thankfully it's for my audience. So nobody can get mad at me. I'm not, it's
Somebody
for
can get
me and
mad
my,
at you.
well, I already have some people who are mad at me for some reason. So, but we can have fun and we can make fun. There's so much fun to be had with all of these concepts that it is sad when people tell you, oh, you can't joke about that. You're going to offend somebody. It's like, well, isn't that the point? It drives you nuts.
Yeah, I mean, and that is a good question. Like, what is, and I feel like that's a question that's really lost on a lot of people is like, why is it so bad to be offended? I mean, is
Right.
being offended, I mean, I guess it depends, right? I mean, it depends on what's going
Yeah.
on. There's some truly egregious things that happen to people. Obviously, we don't want that. But just having some sacred cow tested in your personal life is not the end of the world, especially if it's funny.
And
So
it really is like, what's the point of the joke? Is the joke to say that this group of people is genuinely less intelligent or less deserving of respect than anyone else? Or is it just to say, well, hey, life is weird. Life is weird and there's different types of people and we have differences between us. And it's fun to celebrate those differences. I mean, a good argument is, the character Apu from The Simpsons, where people go, some people go, oh, that's such a horrible, stereotypical character. And I go, well, I think Apu, I don't think the joke is, oh, look at this dumb idiot and he talks like an idiot and whatever else. If anything, Apu was always a very intellectual character or whatever. It was more like, hey, what does American culture look like from that perspective? And also just, our accents inherently offensive. I would say just people like accents,
mm-hmm.
You do a goofy Italian accent, people don't accuse you of racism. You go, the pizza pie, the meatball. It's the sing-song nature of human language. It's these interesting differences between us that we like and we celebrate and we find humorous. And some people have tried to define that as offensive, and I reject it.
Well, The Simpsons is an interesting case. I mean, for one thing, a lot of the characters are stereotypes.
Right.
So you can't really say that one being a stereotype is offensive if so many of them are stereotypes. But also because the voice actors, the whole production agreed that only people of the race of the character would voice that race in the future. But
Right.
but they're all yellow.
Except for Dr. Hibbert, for some
Yeah, I mean,
reason.
they're
The black
mostly
people in Simpsons are. It's like, well, we got to make sure that they're black.
it's just and that's another thing. Like voice actors having to be the race of the animated character in their show or movie is completely bizarre to me. Especially
going
because
even beyond that you have to now share the gender identity of the character. It's like if you're a cisgender man, you can't voice a trans man or a trans lady or and I'm like,
a woman has been voicing Bart Simpson for decades.
Well,
I mean,
for some reason that's it's a complicated subject. There's like too many hairs to pull apart, but it is like, look, I understand that some of you maybe have been unable to get employment opportunities, and I do think everybody should have a fair shake at the job. Everybody should be able to apply and get hired. But ultimately, I think a creative should be able to pick who they think is the best person for the job. And if they go, listen, I just envision the character sounding like this, and it's a voice, it's not a racial thing. I just think this guy. And again, we're talking about funny voices on The Simpsons. Who can do the best funny voice?
right.
The idea that you have to compromise your artistic vision or your comedic vision for the sake of some weird political game, it's very sad. I don't like it. It's same for actors when they say like, oh, you can't have a straight actor play a gay character, and I'm like, first of all, isn't that a little backwards to say,
right?
Gay and straight people are so different that we could never understand each other ever. It's completely different worlds. It's like, no, isn't the idea that we're all human beings? I mean, I look at Ben Kingsley, who played Gandhi, and has played different characters of like all sorts of different races and whatever else. And I always thought that was kind of the magic of cinema, is that it's saying, hey, listen, like we're all human beings deep down, that like one man can embody so many different characters from so many different backgrounds.
Well, sure.
And
especially like
if you're white, you only understand the white experience. If you're black, you only understand the black experience. And that's it.
I can see historically how there have been some bad versions of that. Like Ben Kingsley, of course, is phenomenal and has done a respectful and amazing job.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like Breakfast with Tiffany or Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah.
What's his face? Who played the
Mickey Rooney? Was
Mickey
that
Rooney, who played the Asian character? That's some cringy, awkward shit to watch now. I watch that and I'm just like, oh boy, oh god. But that's like,
yeah, that's pretty bad.
There's like a reaction to something bad. Like Hollywood used to be the realm of white men. They controlled a lot of everything, and now it's much more diverse, and that's good. But there's the overreaction then, where it's like it becomes the point entirely, and so you start to have you sacrifice story, or you sacrifice the best person for the job to meet this political agenda, or the story itself becomes. I don't know if you watched She-Hulk. The story itself is less about the character of She-Hulk and more about just this very on the nose agenda in that show. And it just and so you have like I don't know. It's like the good intentions pave the road to hell, like writ large all over everything in the mainstream right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, look, we again, as I've said, like we refine culture. I think now, yes. Having Mickey Rooney put in false teeth and Asian glasses or whatever and go, oh, me Reiki. Okay, that's too much. Obviously, we get that. Okay. But then, you go to The Office where, like, again, Michael Scott's character kind of lampooned that. And he said, oh, it's time to bring out my character Chang. And everybody makes fun of him. They're like, Mike, you can't do that anymore. You go, well, that's funny. It's funny that it's changed and we know this is unacceptable. And this guy is living in the past and still thinks it's okay to get away with that stuff.
Yeah.
So there has to be like a middle ground of, again, what is the intention of the joke? I would say Mickey Rooney, was mocking Asian people, going, oh, look at how stupid and goofy these people are, or whatever, how backwards. And I think that there's a lot of comedy that doesn't do that, but gets accused of that. And it's unfair.
Yeah. Common sense. Holy shit.
We don't have, dude, but here's what I've learned is there's no such thing as common sense anymore, because there are just people who are saying the most like, not to get, again, I hate to always like touch on these topics, which I'm sure everybody's like tired of talking about, but it's like, hey, sports, the men play against the men and the women play against the women. Doesn't that make a lot of sense? And you go, well, what if the men want to play against the women? You go, well, that would be unfair. We understand this on a level. They have different physical abilities. And then we're going down this route, and I go, well, guys, come on. Whatever. I don't know. Again, and I don't even want to talk about it because I'm going to get canceled because everybody out here is nuts. But you go, guys, like what did happen to common sense? Did it ever actually exist? I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, if you really look throughout history, I don't think so.
No, I think it exists. An illusion.
It like exists on a micro scale. Like it exists between two people having a conversation. But as soon as it sort of like escalates beyond that, it just disappears into institutional decay or into like mob mentality. And then it's just, goodbye.
Yeah. There are just things to me that seem like they should be so obvious. Don't beat up comedians.
Or really most people don't beat up people. Yeah, it's generally a bad idea.
All these arguments of like, no, it's okay to cause political violence as long as it's done for these reasons. I'm like, I think it's just bad regardless. Yeah. I mean, maybe if it's 1984 type situation, you got to fight back. Okay, I get it, but I don't think we're at that point yet, fellas.
Self-defense is usually a pretty good argument for violence.
See, I would say that, but again, that was another one where like that Kyle Rittenhouse thing. I went, look, you don't have to like what he did, you don't have to like what he said, but if somebody attacks him, okay, well, he has the right to defend himself. He doesn't know what this madman's going to do.
Right.
And that's one thing. I'm a guy on the left. Look, I'm still pretty much a leftist, maybe more of a centrist these days or whatever. But I have a lot of friends who are like hardcore, lefties. And they go, well, that guy's a terrorist and he went there to murder people. And I went, guys, the law makes perfect sense. If someone tries to beat you up, you get to do something about it. Like you can't write a more clear law than that.
Right.
But again, I think people are really bogged down in their political positions. And this is what drives me nuts. It's the reason I kind of can't even call myself a lefty anymore, because they kicked me out. Is they go, Vito, you agree with us on this, and this, but you don't agree with us on position X. and that means you're. I had a guy tell me I'm basically a Trump supporter and a far right white wing nut. And I'm like, bro, I voted for Biden. I voted for Obama. How am I the same? He's like, in my mind, you're the same as a MAGA guy at this point. I'm like, because we disagree on one thing. My
Yep.
God. Because because I don't play this political game. I have friends who are right wingers. I do a podcast with Dick Masterson, who has a signed Trump hat and went to his goddamn rally. Okay, and I think he's nuts. Okay, but we're still friends and we do comedy together. And I don't feel like I have to write him off as a human being because we have a couple political disagreements.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know how we've gotten into this. I think you know what it is. Here's my theory. I think that everybody wants to have an enemy. And I think that works great when the country's, for instance, let's say at war. Okay, there was a period of time in this country where it went, well, our enemy is the Germans, and then we had the Cold War, and it went, well, our enemy is the Russians. We went to Vietnam. Our enemy is the Vietnamese, and then everybody was kind of like, okay, well, we all know who we hate. And now it's kind of the point where like we're not really in the middle of any wars, or we've kind of figured out that all the wars are weird ploys to make weapons manufacturers rich. So, we're not mad at Afghanistan. We're not mad at, any other foreign country. So we kind of just have each other left as the only enemy left to demonize. It's like, well, I got to hate something. I guess I'll just hate the other half of the country. We're unified in our hatred. It's very unhealthy what we have.
It's very unhealthy. Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like how I think, there's always been that divide between, liberals and conservatives or Republicans,
Sure.
Democrats, whatever. I do think that over the last, I don't know, maybe it is the internet era that's made it even worse, or maybe it's really since cable news took over. But like that idea that like you have a friend who's a Republican and that makes you a Republican, that's super weird to me. Like that, because I have, because I'm also I consider myself on the left, like, and I have eclectic political beliefs, I guess. But I have lots of people who I respect who are on the right. We don't always agree on everything, just like I don't agree with a lot of left positions these days. But I mean, how could you? Like, it doesn't, again, common sense, political ideas shift over time based on all sorts of factors, right? So either you have to just accept that you're going to shift with every idea and just follow along, or you're going to end up disagreeing. And it's bizarre to me that we have gotten to a point where, like, if you don't agree with everything on this platform, you are no longer part of us at all. I mean, I've been called. I was called around. I was called one of the founders of the alt-right at one point on Twitter.
I get accused of that stuff all the time. I have no idea where it comes from.
Yeah,
I remember when I was like starting off, and like people were like, "Oh, that Vito Gesualdi guy." He was a big like alt-right Gamergate guy, and I was like, I had nothing to do with Gamergate, bros. Like I was not even on the internet when Gamergate, not like I did not have a public persona when Gamergate was going on.
I did.
Yeah,
I got in trouble for that. But I mean, like,
I know that whole thing was bizarre.
I tried to be really fair in the Gamergate days, but like I talked with Milo at the time, like few times we talked, but and he's crazy, but he was very eloquent, charming individual, and it was heady days.
I used to be a game journalist. I don't know if we ever talked about this. I used to do stuff for Destructoid.
Okay.
I was on salary for a while at this site Game Zone or whatever. And honestly, like I think you were there as well, as like we saw kind of like this over progressive push, because the game industry is a very progressive space. It's full of hippies and weirdos. So kind of what happened to popular culture was happening in the game industry even sooner, I think, than a lot of other industries.
It's definitely a bellwether.
Yeah. And I remember being like, guys, I think that you're pushing a little too hard. Like your audience, they're just here because they like video games. They don't want to hear like, hey, every video game is sexist, and you're a sexist if you like them, and you're also racist, and you're hurting this group and this group and this group. I'm like, how is this fun for anybody? And now we're seeing them all go out of business, which, I shouldn't be gleeful, but I am gleeful in the fact that I told you to stop. Like, why? And I think we're seeing this a lot, that people are rejecting this constant woke scolding culture.
Yeah.
Of nobody wants to wake up every day and be told they're a shitty person. Nobody wants to wake up every day and be told, the enemy of half of America. And it's happening in our politics. It's happening in our media. And I think it's literally driving people insane. Like, if you think you're going to stop racism, I've seen people who went from like, maybe he's a little, unconventional. Maybe he has some bad ideas. Sure. If anything, all this like constant, if you don't say the right thing, we're going to take away your job. We're going to push you out of society. It seems like, if anything, it's just made those people further entrenched in their
Yeah.
ideas.
You know, it's funny though. A better way to like convert people than scolding is through comedy. Like, honestly, like if you're funny, if you're making jokes, if you're relatable and engaging, and you're and like, that's how people, I mean, like, it's like the gay uncle theory of like acceptance of of gay people, right? Like, you are familiar. You have friends who are gay. You have you see it in popular culture and it's entertaining. Gay people, like, in popular culture, have been funny. That's one of the things that became endearing about the gay community over time, and that's, I think, led to acceptance. But in the current moment, with wokeism or social justice or whatever you want to call it, it's just not funny. There's nothing relatable or funny in it. It's all scolding. It's all that cancellation, and that's not gonna bring people over through relatable, engaging, funny anecdotes, whatever.
No,
and
that's
it's just it's
point.
backwards.
Yeah.
They're doing it backwards.
I totally agree, because here's the thing: is right now, if I want to make jokes about, let's say, the transgender community, people will tell me, well, you can't joke about that.
No, not allowed.
Right. But I go, okay, well then who is going to who will talk about the transgender community? And he goes, well, basically every political talking head is going to go in there, and a lot of them are saying frankly crazy things that, like, oh, they want to molest everybody, and they're all sex criminals and whatever else. And I don't agree with that. I have my own disagreements with some of the ideology, but I don't think they're inherently evil people, and I don't think they're working on a Satanist agenda to destroy your children. And I would say, if you let a stand-up comedian get on stage and go, hey, isn't it a little weird to want to cut off your penis? Like, isn't that a little, and everybody laughs. And the comedian goes, but you know what? If it makes you happy, what can you do? And that's how you get to acceptance. Right. Is like, totally. Yes, guys, we have to be honest. This is the first time in the whole of human history that cutting off your dick is considered an act of great personal bravery. Like, previously you would go, oh my God, what are you doing? Now you go, way to go, man. Yeah, that's you. That's all you. Okay. Yeah. And we have to be able to joke about that. We have to be able, that is inherently funny.
It's humanizing.
No, it's funny. Yeah. And it is humanizing. Mm-hmm. It is humanizing to be able to go, you know what? Hey, you got the freedom, do whatever you want. Okay. Do I endorse it necessarily? I don't know. Okay. But I should be allowed to talk about it. We should be able to, come to a greater truth, to a greater understanding. And yes, it does disarm those conversations. People watched Will and Grace and they saw a gay guy hanging around talking about, I'm going to go hang out with this guy and suck his whatever. Okay. And you go, that's, that's just a fun guy. Yeah, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's how we integrate these characters. But when you suck out all the humor out of it and you say, not only are you not allowed to talk about it, but you're not allowed to write about it. If you want to write about it, you got to hire a sensitivity consultant to tell you everything you did wrong. If you want someone to play a transgender character, it has to be a transgender person because you're not allowed. It's like, guys, when you set up all these rules and you make yourself a sacred cow that no one's allowed to talk about, naturally you become, people have a problem with it. Let's put it
you become closed off from the rest of humanity. For one thing, it puts you into on a pedestal or in an ivory tower or in some or a glass box where you are no longer part of just that messy, funky, weird, sometimes ugly, sometimes beautiful thing that makes up humanity. Ironically, the Dave Chappelle special that got him in so much trouble actually had a pretty powerful story about a trans person, which again was a comedy special that was controversial, but ultimately I thought was a humanizing story about a person who is trans, and very sad, actually, in the end. So I was pretty confused. I'd heard about all that controversy, and then I watched the special, and then I was confused. Then I was.
The special is not nearly as offensive as they make it out to be.
No, I mean, I think it's because he says things that are provocative, as comedians do, and people took it to be as face value rather than as something provocative to get you thinking. I mean, like part of comedy is to piss people off, to disarm them so that you can then say something that makes them think. And I don't know, like, I guess,
Yeah, and we're losing a lot of that. We're losing. People have lost the ability to conceptualize the idea that something somebody says on stage or as a joke or in a book or whatever else does not necessarily reveal their. Everybody thinks they're like a conspiracy theorist mastermind now, as they go, well, he said this, but what he really meant is this. And you go, I think what he meant was what he said on stage. I think he's trying. They all want to say, well, secretly this means he hates trans people, or J.K. Rowling said this, but secretly she wants us all to die. And I go, well, that's your theory. I don't see the basis for it. I think we just have to take people at face value, and what they say is what they mean. And unfortunately, we have everybody constantly looking for secret meanings and everything, and thinking everything is a secret plot against various communities. Look, I can understand wanting to speculate, and yes, maybe there are some guys who do this kind of dog whistling thing where they go, you know who I'm
sure.
talking about, right? And like, yeah, okay, there is some of that, but it's not everybody. And to try and accuse everybody of having these secret hateful agendas, I don't know. Everybody, again, I think everybody's gone insane, and we're all constantly looking around to try and figure out who the enemy is. And a lot of the times there just isn't one. It's just we're all human beings, we're all complex, we're all making mistakes. And we don't solve those. We aren't made better people by when somebody makes a mistake, we get on Twitter and we try to ruin their life and their career. I don't think that pushes us in the right direction.
Doesn't seem to be working too well. So back to Super Killer. This campaign was for the first issue, right?
Yes.
And so, do you have plans for like more issues? Is this?
I have a little document which I'm constantly adding to of where I would like this to go. I don't want this to be a one-time thing. I would love for this to be an ongoing series. Part of the problem, with comics is, like DC. A lot of people, to try and make a quality book, it takes time. People are like, well, you make a comic every month, right? And you're like, yeah, but if you look at those monthly comics, they're not great. Like, they kind of rush them out. So it's going to be kind of interesting to figure out what is the sweet spot and like how many issues can I realistically put out in a year. This one took a lot of time because there was a lot of pre-production, a lot of planning. Ideally, if I could somehow find a way to put out like 2 issues a year, that would be ideal. Maybe, I don't know, maybe more. But I would love for this to be, a real story that evolves. And we have so many fun places to take it. Again, going to all these different worlds and, having to deal with the different realities there. One world we want to do is, he goes to like an anime world and has to fight these magical girls and whatever else. And we've had discussions about other. And then also, a lot of the stuff I want to do, I'm giving away some spoilers, is like, what is this weird agency that has recruited not only him, but there are other agents like him that are out here killing superheroes? And he's actually one of the most well-adjusted among them. Like, some of these other guys are like, I just love killing superheroes, man. He's like, yeah, you guys are fucked. Something's wrong with you, right? So, I want to dig into this agency and all these different guys they got working for them, all these weirdos and creeps who are out here murdering, and they're murdering the good guys. It sucks. And is there a way? Do we really need to be doing this? Is there a different way to fix the multiverse? Like, there's a lot of stuff we want to do. Hopefully we can make something happen. But the way that this first issue is going, that people are behind it, if people get behind the character and they like the premise, I think we can do a lot with it. And I'm very excited.
Hell yeah. Well, it sounds fun. I'm excited for it.
Oh man, it's so fun. I'll have to show you this document sometime. We have a list of like all the different people we want them to fight. It's like, it's just ridiculous. Some of them, honestly, I'm talking about like comedy. I'm like, all right, well, that one might actually be a little too far.
Well, at least you got like options. I mean, it's the kind of story where I imagine it does give you a lot of creative freedom and maybe even like.
That's true. There's a lot of different ways that we could take it. Yeah. I have the ending in mind. I know. Oh God, there's so many twists and turns, but you can't get ahead of yourself for your creator. You got to take it one step at a time.
Although having an ending in mind is really important.
It is,
as we've seen so many times in so many stories. The lack of an ending really hurts.
Yeah. You should know. You don't know. You don't need to know it exactly, but my storytelling advice would be you should know where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
J.J. Abrams, for example, is a guy who goes, "Wouldn't it be cool if we just figured it out as we went along?" And it's like,
Yeah.
no, stop.
Well, I mean,
Because
speaking
then
of
you
Star
end up.
Wars, how on earth could they have not have planned out that trilogy from the beginning?
I
How?
don't
It is
know.
one
It
of the great
blows my
mysteries.
mind.
I know, it's so crazy.
The
Like,
only possible explanation is they just wanted. They had just paid whatever. What was it? $9 billion or $28 billion for Star Wars, whatever it was, or two
no, it
point eight
wasn't.
billion. I think it
It
was.
was a lot less than 28. Yeah, it was like 4
Yeah,
billion
I
or
think it was
something.
2.4 billion. I think I compared it to the gross domestic product of Liberia. It was an incredible amount of money.
There's a lot.
And they went, we need to make a movie immediately because that's a lot of money we just spent. Because I would have said, okay, we bought Star Wars. Let's spend 5 years
Uh-huh.
planning it out, or at least, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years. Instead, it seems they were just like, we need to make a movie immediately to start making that money back. And
Well, I
again,
mean,
they were high on all the Marvel money they'd been making. So
yeah.
I think Marvel gave Disney a big head. I think Marvel, they went, we are gods among men. Everything we do
Yeah.
turns to gold. The Marvel Universe is the greatest success story in the history of movie making. Surely we will just get it right. And they quickly learned, no, you needed to take some time and think about this.
Well, it's so
And
strange too
sadly they
because
didn't.
Marvel, honestly, like at least they had a bit of a plan. Like they have done, for all the criticisms of the MCU, they have done a pretty good job of linking a lot of different stories into
Yeah.
one
The
cinematic
MCU
universe.
is still a Herculean effort of storytelling.
Yeah,
It's literally mystifying. We've never seen this before in the whole of human history.
right.
Has there been such a complex universe with so many working parts and people working on it? So you can't take that away from them. The problem is like thinking that was going to continue forever and that you
Right.
could just infinitely replicate it. When you
That's
could
a
have just
problem.
looked and been like, well, everyone else who's trying to replicate it, they tried to have a what do you call it? They tried to have the dark universe and the DC universe, and like everybody
Mhm.
else failed at it. Disney, I don't think you possess some magical skill to get it done. You really do need the planning and the time and the great storytellers to figure out your lore and whatever else.
There were so many people involved in Star Wars before the sequel trilogy, writers in the extended universe, people involved with Clone Wars. It's crazy that they just didn't find a crack team of Star Wars people to come up with a trilogy and block it out before they started filming. It's just crazy to me. It's crazy.
Yeah. And then after it went off the rails, they went, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get the guy who wrote Batman v Superman to fix it. And I went, what? Are you kidding me? What are you doing? Like, no. Him and J.J. Abrams, they've got it figured. That was the worst part is that I look at The Last Jedi. I don't like Force Awakens. I hate The Last Jedi. But I looked at that movie and I looked at it very intently. And in my head, I went, I think you can fix this. I think you could. You can't fix it entirely. I think no matter what, that third movie, people are going to go, whatever. But I think you could have at least got to a point where it's like, okay, at least something happened that was kind of interesting and leaves the series on a good note. I actually started writing my own version of Star Wars Episode 9. I still want to finish it at some point because I think you could have fixed it if you did a couple things. My most controversial one is I think you have to bring Luke Skywalker back from the dead. I know that sounds stupid, but I don't think you can end the Star Wars sequel trilogy with with Han, Luke, and Leia dead. It's too depressing.
It's
like
pretty
they
depressing.
all died. Not one of them gets to. Oh my god! So I
That
have
was
all
strange,
these
right? Yeah.
Yes, I was thinking about it the other day. Is that famously, for Return of the Jedi, which I saw is in theaters again, Lawrence Kasdan was like, we got to kill Han Solo. And George Lucas was kind of like, what is this Hollywood rule that we got to kill somebody? Like, why is that a necessity? Like, I don't think we do have to kill Han Solo. Now, some people will argue that maybe Han's, arc was already done by that movie and maybe you could have killed him off. But I think Star Wars is enduring and fun because of the idea that the characters continue on. They're serial adventurers, right? It's based on Flash Gordon. They continue to have adventures. They might show up again at any point. I think killing them off just because they're old and cutting off an entire realm of storytelling. Did Han Solo really need to die? Did his kid really need to kill him? I mean, yes, it makes for. I mean, honestly, I thought that whole death scene was terrible, but I guess in my mind, I can understand how the death of Han Solo could be deep and meaningful. But I don't know.
You
Why
know,
not? Why? What am I
Leia,
getting
that's
out
the
of
only
that?
death that made sense, and that is strictly because of the practical reality on the ground, honestly.
And that was
I
the
mean,
one they didn't want to do. She was
yeah,
supposed to be the one who survived.
yep, yep. Oh, Lord.
God, the
That's
fact
it.
that they used the footage they used of
Ugh,
her in the third movie, because they
yeah,
just had leftover footage of her handing over a lightsaber. So
yeah,
the
it's
two scenes of
bad.
her, we did like a commentary, and I'm like, all right, here's the scene where she gives Rey the lightsaber, and she just hands it over, and now she's gonna take it back because that's the only scene they have is them
Oh,
handing a
God.
lightsaber back and forth. Oh, it's so
It's a little
ridiculous.
ghoulish too, using Carrie Fisher after she's already passed. It's just like I don't know. They had an
And
opportunity to end her arc in a much better way, and they blew it.
not to mention, guys, I make this point in my Rise of Skywalker review, which I think people should watch and was hilarious, is that Carrie Fisher was not only, a Star Wars person, but was like a Hollywood legend. She wrote for movies like The Wedding Singer, Sister Act. Like, she was famous in Hollywood and did all this stuff. Like, and this is the death of her most beloved character of all time, an enduring figure from across like 40 years. And the movie spends like 30 seconds
Hmm.
of just like her dead body under a sheet. And you're like, that's the send off for Carrie Fisher? Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
And then I compare it to, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
yeah,
Have you seen it?
I have. Yeah.
Okay,
What?
sorry. But
Which with
remember,
Mondu or
remember remember Yondu?
Yandu?
Just
I would say Mondu.
some blue guy
Yeah,
dies. Okay. What does that
yeah,
movie end with? It ends with like a 5-minute funeral
yeah.
sequence, and there's lights in the sky, and every character takes time to reflect, and they go, "Yondu, what a great hero! He has inspired me, and how incredible it is that we were, in his last moments, he was able to save us all." And what Leia doesn't get anything
I
close to
know.
Yondu.
I know.
Why does Yondu get better than Leia fucking Organa, Carrie Fisher? Like,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah, yeah. It's
It's
fucking
because that movie
crazy.
was just jammed full of garbage,
Yeah.
and just everyone's running around and screaming at each other, and then
The
it didn't
pacing
take
is so
any
bad.
time. The
Oh my
pacing is so
God.
bad.
The pacing
They
is
talked to
so
the guy who
bad.
made it, and he's like, "Well, I wanted to make 2 movies, but Disney wouldn't let me." So,
So I just
uh,
crammed them together.
so I just crammed it all. You just crammed it all together. What is wrong with you? Don't do that. Just come up with a different plot.
Oh
And the plot
God.
makes no sense. They're like, it's like a Goonies adventure. They're solving mysteries. I'm like, that's how you're going to end the trilogy with a fucking scavenger hunt? This is the
I
stupidest thing.
honestly, if it had been anywhere near as good as the Goonies, I would have been happy. But
Sure.
that
But
is
instead, it's
not the
like
Goonies.
there's a magic knife that leads to a magic triangle, and then they break the triangle, so it doesn't even matter.
Oh God.
Oh my God. That
Oh,
movie
it's
is.
yeah. It's
If
bad.
anyone ever hires Chris Terrio to write a movie again, they're the dumbest person in the world. The only job that guy should have should be ladling out soup in the Warner Brothers cafeteria. He doesn't have a creative bone in his body. My God.
Did
Chris
you like
Terrio.
Andor?
I did like Andor.
I liked
I
Andor a
didn't love
lot.
I don't know if I loved Andor, but I did like Andor. It is very strong.
Yeah, that was really good.
Uh
One of the most interesting things about that is listening to Tony Gilroy talk about how he hired a lot of people who weren't hardcore Star Wars fans to make it
yeah.
because he wanted to be able to not be beholden to the Star Wars universe as much. So he wanted to be able to confront some of the I guess sacred cows or whatever. But the ironic thing about that is that they ended up making a show that felt more true to Star Wars than most of the Disney era Star Wars.
It's
And
weird
that's
because Star Wars is a brand that has like a complicated identity,
yeah,
because some of it is like, great heroism and, deep space opera or whatever else. And some of it is, fucking droids and stupid monsters going, dooku, baba, jubu, and like all this
yes.
goofiness and weirdo shit. And like, it's really hard to find the balance.
Yeah.
A lot of Star Wars stuff, it does kind of get bogged down in the Dooku Bookadoo and like, all that garbage. And I think what you find out is like, okay, yeah, we like a little bit of that, but mostly, guys, what we want is like a good, serious, like space epic story.
Yeah.
We don't want Jack Black and Lizzo
Oh
playing
my God.
goofball with a little baby Yoda character.
Oh my God. Like,
You can do that. You got to do that. Like, you get like one scene. Go,
yeah.
here's Jack Black. He does a funny thing, and then cut and go make the rest of the episode should be serious. But
I mean,
instead,
they had
it's like,
Christopher Lloyd in that episode. That's all they
and he
needed.
wasn't even trying to
Why?
be. Yeah.
Why put in 2 more major cameos when you've got Christopher Lloyd? And Jack Black should have been an alien or a robot or something instead of Jack Black. Like, he should have just
Yeah.
voiced something. He's too
that's
Jack Black.
true.
I mean, I love Jack
That's
Black, but he's
true.
just too Jack Black. So you got to put him. I mean, like in Rogue One, it was Alan Tudyk who did the voice of one of the droid, and
okay. Yeah.
and that's good because
That was awesome.
He's got a great voice. He's a very funny man, but I like that he was. Like, sometimes you don't need to have the face of the actor. You just
Right.
you can just have we've got a lot of options for face for masks and robots and aliens in Star Wars. But I don't know. Yeah, I think Andor probably was not as funny as Star Wars should be on balance. Like, it should be a little bit goofy now and then, and it was real serious.
The little stuttering droid, but the stuttering droid was kind of sad.
He was sad. I felt really bad for him, and they did that really well.
Is really trying. I think you know what, you almost have to do with Andor, because Andor is trying to be like, listen, man, let's be real. Like, this is the Germans seizing control and putting everyone into
universe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the bad part of the Star Wars.
Yeah.
Okay. You can maybe have a little levity. I mean, even Schindler's List, you get a couple good laughs, but not at the parts. The parts that are meant to be funny. Oh my God, that's terrible. But no, there's the best part, and isn't it Ben Kingsley in Schindler's List where he goes, it's like, oh, there's you got to go this way, and he goes, are there any Jews left? He's got that Jewish humor, and I'm like, oh, that's great. So I think Andor, though, is just like so dark and depressing that I'm like, all right, guys, you gotta give me a little levity. But
although then you compare it with like this season of The Mandalorian, and it's like, it's just so dumb and goofy the whole time. Like, not even funny goofy, just like bad. I don't know.
Just like weird, like it's like camp. It's like way too campy. Book of Boba Fett was the same way, where I was like, Robert Rodriguez, I think, does not understand Star Wars. He's like,
totally.
Oh, isn't it cool how like camp and pop and whatever it is? I'm like, no, treat it seriously. Stop.
Mm-hmm. Or Obi-Wan.
Oh, it's so weird, man. Like, ooh, what if these kids had like, what if there was like 50s motorbikes in space? Like, don't make it stupid.
Well, like, that's the thing. Like, that's what Andor does really well also, is that it gets the aesthetic right. And I think that Star Wars is so much about the aesthetic that it's really important that you get that right. You have, the hairstyles, the weird, I mean, it's kind of like a 70s look. You really have to get that right.
I was going to say the same thing. Like, when you go, whatever that guy is who really wants to work for the Empire or whatever, and you go to his mom's weird apartment and he's eating like space cereal in this stupid 70s looking booth. I'm like, this is so much cooler than anything. I watched that guy eat space cereal. I was like, this is for, like, to me, as a guy who cares about aesthetics and art and whatever, I'm like, I find this infinitely more interesting than Mando swinging around the Darksaber.
Oh yeah,
like,
and same with like Mon Mothma's apartments, and there's just a lot of really interesting architectural and interior design there, symbolism that parallels other scenes throughout the show. It's just the attention to detail and just getting that aesthetic, that feel, that mood, even the soundtrack, all of that. I love that you don't really hear the Star Wars themes. I actually went back and watched Rogue One after Andor, and like right off you're hearing like the Force and you're hearing the Star Wars theme music, and I'm like, this actually makes this feel worse to me. Like, I like that Andor kind of like gave us all of that great juicy aesthetic, but didn't like shove the Force down our throats. Didn't make it like so obviously Star Wars in the sort of almost more superficial ways.
It
really
gave us a
brave.
World. It's like it's a Star Wars show that's going, we're not gonna just give you the fan service. We're not gonna do it.
But we're gonna be really true to this universe still.
Anything. Did they do anything fan servicey in Andor? Was there any like reference or anything?
There was no Skywalker stuff, thank God Almighty. They were
Tarkin come back? Was that all Rogue One?
That was Rogue One, and that was one of the
Yeah.
worst parts of it. And they even like they were subversive, and I thought a super effective way. I know people like subversive can be a bad word now, but in the speech that the one rebel like idealist has that Andor listens to, the last line is it's like, above all else, try. And I thought that was like a really cool way, because he's talking about like that whole speech is amazing. Like I read that every once in a while because it's like talks about how like freedom is natural and organic and authority is brittle. And then at the very end he says, above all else, try. And it's such a counter to Yoda's do or do not,
Right.
there is no try, which over the years, I admit I've never really liked do or do not, there is no try. It feels really weird to me. Like it goes against kind of, I guess, my own ethos of like, you have to try things. Like if you don't try things, you're never going to succeed. You know, you're never going to fail. So you're never going to succeed. I don't know. I just thought it was like a
that was
really
always one of the
well
interesting
done
parts of this, of the Star Wars universe that everybody always wanted to see explored is like the Jedi were kind of okay. The Jedi were cool. They flipped around. They had lightsabers, but they were also a like deeply flawed religious order that clung to like some weird ideas of like, well, you're not allowed to love anybody. And it's like, well, what if it's going to drive me insane and turn me into a crazy Sith psychopath?
Right.
I'm like, well, still not allowed to do it or talk to anybody about it. Yeah, that would have been. Andor is great. It's great. It is. But the problem is, I don't even think it got good viewing numbers.
No.
So I don't know what they do. It's
well, I mean, but at that
people
point,
just turned off to Star Wars.
I think so. I think people are really burning out because shit has just not been good. Same with like by the time Solo released, I don't think Solo was just a bad movie. I think it was just there was so much bad Star Wars leading up to Solo, and but
I also just think the brand doesn't have a brand identity. It's like. And we're seeing this with Marvel, is that like Marvel used to be all the same thing. These are colorful family films. They're fun. You go see them, you waste some time. There's some action and whatever. And then they started getting into, but what if it was like a dark drama, or what if it was horror or whatever else? And it's like, well, now I don't know what Marvel movies are. They're all sorts of, or TV shows or anything. It's like the brand is all over the place.
Yeah.
And the same with Star Wars is that I'm like, okay, well, what is Star Wars? Like some of it's for kids. Some of it's a little more adult. Some of it's violent, and some of it's like goofy robots and Ewoks and shit. I think they got to pick a lane, and they refuse to. And fans are kind of feeling this whiplash of like, bro, I don't know when I go to watch a Star Wars, am I gonna get, Last Jedi? Am I gonna get Mandalorian? Am I gonna get Andor? Like, what is the tone? What is the overarching feel? It's just like all over the place.
Well, and that goes back to before Disney. I mean, the prequel trilogy, was such a huge tonal and aesthetic shift from the original trilogy. All that was all over the place.
Hating it.
I hated it so much.
Star Wars,
dude. I went to the first one in theaters, and I was like 18 or something, and 18, 19. I don't know. I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. And I had to pee like halfway through, but I didn't leave the theater because I was like, this is going to get good. I swear to God, I left and I was just like, what the fuck was that? I was so pissed off. And then
I remember being like, what happened to like all the lived in sets and like, like everything was like so shiny and regal and.
Right. Other than the Jedi robes, nothing looked the same. Like just looked like the spaceships were different.
Dude, the spaceships were yellow. I was like, where are the X-Wings? Where are the
yeah. And the stormtroopers are now like just these stupid battle droids that are like goofy, like, oh God, a Jar Jar fucking Binks.
George really screwed up with the battle droids.
Oh my God.
If he had made the battle droids at least look cool, the big hulking ones were almost cool. But the fact that they were just like pointing their arms forward and firing a laser, I was like, nah, give them like guns and stuff. But those stupid little rabbit-looking battle droids, I was like, oh, bro.
And the CGI was not. It was state of the art, but it still looked worse than practical effects in the movies that were 20 years older. And so honestly, when people are like, give Star Wars back to Lucas, I'm like, nah, fuck Disney, fuck Lucas. We need somebody who actually has vision to run Star Wars, and I don't know who that would be, but I don't know, like.
I mean, my honest belief is that I don't think you can fix it at this point.
You probably can't, or probably not anytime soon.
I no longer believe in the power of the endless franchise.
Yeah.
Okay. I will make the argument that Star Wars was exciting to you because a guy shows you a lightsaber and you go, what the fuck? I've never seen that before.
Mhm.
The Force is a magic power. You're like, oh my God. All the excitement of these franchises is learning the rules of how they work, learning the technology. Once you learn everything, I know what the Force is, I know what the lightsaber is, I know what a Clone War is. Like, all the mysteries have been solved. So
Yeah.
you have the only thing left is to create create these filler shows like, yeah, but you know who got the Death Star plans? It's like, I don't know. Show me that. Or to like come up with new mysteries, but it's very limited in what you can do. Like,
Yeah.
what is left to learn about the Star Wars universe?
Yeah. Well, and
Uh
the original trilogy told a really satisfying arc. You know,
yeah.
you get it. You by the end of that trilogy, it's like, okay, like they beat the bad guys. You know, Luke had a bonding
Peace
moment with his
returns to the
dad.
universe.
You
Yeah.
know, everything, the balance has been restored to the Force. And then they're like, nah, that's not actually the balance. We got to, the balance is going to be off balance again. And we got to restore the balance of the Force again. And it's like, yeah, guys, I don't know.
The idea that what drives me nuts is that your whole story, when your hero wins the day and Luke wins at the end of the original trilogy, is that we go, okay, well, the nature of heroism and good storytelling is that the hero is rewarded for his efforts. Okay, he doesn't destroy the empire and then they go, yeah, but you're a piece of shit and no one loves you. It's like, no, you're a great hero, congratulations, you did the right thing. Okay, you are a morally good person, you resisted the call of the dark side, and for that you will be justly rewarded and restore the Jedi Order and live whatever. And instead, in the sequel trilogy, it goes, you can be a great guy and you can do everything right, but then some snot-nosed nephew is going to show up and kill all your people, and then you're going to go off yourself on an island. And I'm like,
I think you
how is that an
could have.
exciting story for anyone? That's the most depressing fucking thing I've ever heard.
I mean, it could be a really good story. I'm not sure it's a Star Wars story. You know, like it
Yes,
could be
that is
an
look.
interesting story. It's
You
just not a
can
Star
tell
Wars story.
these subversive stories. I have no
Mhm.
problem with subversion. Yes, obviously, in the real world, you can do everything right, and you might end up
Mhm.
down and destroyed. And that's a great story for certain genres. We're talking about space fantasy epics for children, where everybody we've
Yeah.
spent the last 30 years or whatever it is going, I love Luke Skywalker, and I'm so glad that at the end of that movie, he got what he wanted. And to have somebody show up and go, well, actually, did you know that afterwards his life
Yeah.
fell apart and he was a piece of shit? You're like, who the fuck are you to do that to me? What are you doing? What is
Well, not to
fucking
even.
psychologically wrong with you that you would take this
Yeah.
hopeful icon that has endured for 30, 40 years and go, actually, he's a fucking failure. And that is like sinister. Ryan Johnson
Yeah.
is a legitimately horrible person for taking that away from us.
Oh God, now I'm depressed.
He subverted it. Fuck you, subvert my dick, you fucking piece of... that's why you can't get connected. You can't attach yourself to this stuff because it'll drive you nuts thinking about what could have been. It could have been just all you had to do was go, here's Luke. He's living in the Jedi Temple. There's a new generation of Jedi. They're running around the universe, whatever. Like, that's all we wanted.
Yep. Let's have another adventure. Let's have a new conflict. Let's not repeat the Death Star. Let's not repeat the Empire. Let's do something new with this.
You look at the movies on a timeline, it goes Return of the Jedi. It was the name of the 6th movie. You're like, the Jedi are back. The 8th movie is called The Last Jedi. And you're like, well, why the fuck did they return then? What is the point
Right?
of that?
I know.
What a waste
right?
of my time. You don't go from the return. They've returned. That was the whole point of the movie. To then, and now there's only one. Well, who returned then? What happened? It makes me crazy. I'm going nuts still. That's why I can't talk about Star Wars anymore, because I go nuts. I go crazy.
And we've come full circle.
We have come full circle.
Cool. All right. Well, man, this has been fun. Super Killer.
Yes.
It's on Indiegogo for a couple months,
Available
right?
now
Your campaign
on Indiegogo. I have the campaign going for 2 months just because I wanted to give myself time. I didn't think it was going to hit the goal right away, so I set it for a long time. But
Okay.
this is
Good
great.
problem to have.
Well, yeah, and also it gives people time to go, let's be real. It's a weird economic situation for people. Sometimes you got to be like, all right, I want to buy it, but I can't buy it now. Maybe I'll buy it next month. So you got a little bit of time, but please check it out. Again, if you look at the state of modern media and you're like, what are these people doing? As I'm saying right now, the change is going to come from the independent scene. Okay. You have people making independent comics, movies, music, whatever else. And the mainstream is going to look at the success we're having and they're going to go, okay, we're doing something wrong because these guys are knocking it out of the park. So even if you don't buy my comic, go on these sites like Kickstarter, like Indiegogo. If you have a couple bucks in your pocket and you see a cool project, like support it, because if you
Yeah.
want to see change, this is the only way it happens. Okay,
Yep.
I go to comic conventions and I go to all the indie booths and the comics or whatever, and I just buy a bunch of comics. I barely even look at them because I go, you know what? At least you're creating something that's different from the mainstream. Just keep making stuff.
Yep.
Because right now culture's in a dumpster, and the mainstream does not want to change it. It has to be the independent guys.
Yep. And it's same across gaming,
Yes.
tabletop games, RPGs, all that. There's a lot of great indie
All the
stuff out there.
innovation is
And
coming
yep.
from the independents, and it's fantastic. Be a part of it. Even if you're not if you're a creator yourself, make your own stuff. But even if you're not, support your friends, support people you see doing cool stuff. Like that's the best you spend all this money on Netflix and whatever the hell else. You give all this money to these guys who make trash. Spend a little bit of money, hopefully, making this independent revolution happen. I'm very excited about it.
Fucking A. All right, man. Well, thanks for chatting. That was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, man. It was a good talk.